Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. A very hot world at the moment, as we were just discussing a moment ago. Welcome to the latest WorkCast webinar entitled 5 Ways to Make Your Webinars Rock with HubSpot. A kind of special webinar today because we're focusing on a specific set of users for webinars, those people that are using HubSpot. As always, please feel free to ask questions via the Ask a Question button on your screens. We are going to run a series of polls today, so please answer those polls. We'll publish the results as we go through. I'm actually going to ask a poll right now, which is, are you a HubSpot user? So feel free to go in and answer that question. I'd like to introduce our two speakers today. So I'm really excited to have a member of my own organization here, Rachel, but also really excited to have Tyler Pigott from Lone Fir. Hi, Tyler.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well today. We were just discussing how hot it is here in the Seattle area.
Yes, definitely. Same. I'm a bit south of Seattle, but it's definitely real warm here too. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. As Barney said, I'm an owner of Lone Fir Creative, which is a growth agency specific to helping customers with, or helping our clients with lead generation and customer acquisition and client engagement. A variety of different solutions there. We are a HubSpot partner, so we're helping a lot of different clients of ours utilize their HubSpot platforms to its fullest extent. And there's a lot of different tactics and activities that are all engaged with that, but we're excited to talk specifically about webinars today. So thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you on board, Tyler, and thanks for joining us. And then I wanted to introduce Rachel Charlton, all the way from the UK. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Barney. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Sounds like
tell us a little about your role.
What it is over there.
Yeah.
So I am the business development manager here at WorkCast at the headquarters in the UK, based in the Northeast. I am part of the new business team. So we work very well with HubSpot in terms of being a HubSpot customer ourselves, in terms of being a customer of the CRM and marketing. But in terms of our platform, we're a purpose-built webinar platform. We also are able to do virtual events and webcasts. And we're very unique in the sense that we're an entirely browser-based platform as well. And what we've been able to do is, in turn, is actually become a HubSpot Connect partner. So that's what we're going to look and kind of drill in on today and discuss how that's going to sort of help propel people's webinars and online communications.
Thanks, Rachel, and you've segued us beautifully into the agenda for today. Just in terms of the response on that first poll. We are about 75% of our attendees are HubSpot users, so that's great. So for those of you who aren't HubSpot users, stick with us because I guess you'll hear a little bit about HubSpot and what it can do and some of its functionality, and that might help, and certainly hear some best practice around webinars as well. So let's talk a little bit about the agenda. So we're going to kind of cover it from two sides, and that's why we've got two speakers. We're going to cover webinars from the organizer's perspective, so the digital marketer, the person who's responsible for setting up that webinar and putting it all together and the running of the webinar. And we're going to look at that from both the digital marketer and the agency's perspective, and Tyler's going to help us with some of that. And then Rachel and I will have some views on that too. And then we're going to look at webinars from the salesperson's perspective, and that's why we've got Rachel on board. So, what is how does Rachel view webinars in her world as a salesperson, and how does she interact with the data from that webinar, and how does it help them, specifically related to our use of HubSpot? It's worth pointing out that WorkCast is with a HubSpot customer and a HubSpot partner, so we're eating our own lunch here. We're doing everything in the HubSpot related way, so we'll come on to that in due course. So just going to stick up a second poll here for you all, which is how many webinars does your organization run per quarter? And there's some answers here, so 0, 1 to 2, 3 to 5, more, or don't know. So quickly answer that poll, and we'll get a gauge then of how many webinars people are actually running in their organizations. For us here at WorkCast, we're in the more category. You'd hope so. We're a webinar platform, so we're running plenty of webinars, both customer support webinars, marketing webinars, and sales webinars. So we're running plenty on a quarterly basis, but not all organizations are like us. So please just answer that poll, and then we can move on. So I'm just going to get the results in. Thank you for that. And so, whoa, mixed bag there. So we're kind of split equally between the four sections. Some people are running none. That's to be expected. Some people are running one or two. In fact, let me publish these out for you all to see. And some people 3 to 5, some people more. So that's really good. And then some people don't even know how many of their organization is running. So let's move on and talk a little bit about webinars and some of the barriers that currently marketers are struggling with on webinars. So Tyler, we talked about this. Take us through some of the stuff that you're experiencing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually excited to get to the other side of the pains, but let's identify some of the pains of running a webinar, to start with. But there's a long list of things. There's a long list of things that are a deterrent for a lot of digital marketers and agencies to want to really even tackle the whole webinar tactic as a lead generator. And you can see there's lots on the screen, but obviously you've got to choose your webinar service. So there's so many different ones out there. We just highlighted kind of GoToWebinar, Zoom, WebEx. You can kind of go on forever, but you're going to spend a lot of time researching that. You're going to have to create your events, write your copy for landing pages and emails. Obviously create those landing pages, drive traffic to those. Number 6 is probably the biggest piece. You got to get people to show up at your webinar. And then once they've kind of, registered and then okay, now what? How do you confirm? How do you make sure they show up for the webinar? Creating the slide deck and your cameras, and how do you want to pull off that whole kind of user experience functions, hosting the webinar, and then after, that post follow up. So there's just so many different kind of barriers to, and a lot of different companies might have multiple different tools that they're using for each of these different checklist items. So maybe a different landing page tool creator, a different, email creator, all those types of things. I know that the majority of people on the webinar today are definitely interested in or around HubSpot, and so they've been in that ecosystem for a long time, and so many of these things are all under one hood. So that's really positive. But yeah, as far as kind of, we can jump into a little bit deeper here into the initial, or I guess that next kind of once you've chosen a webinar platform, then what? And I think that's on the next slide there, Barney.
Yeah, so let's drill into some of those barriers, more deeply, because I think there's some of these things that, certainly marketers, digital marketers and agencies like yourself are really starting to care about a lot more. And we'll kind of drill into them bit by bit. So let's talk about branding to start off with. So, we as digital marketers, especially people who are using HubSpot, see the opportunity to create lots of content that is all consistently branded, from our emails to our landing pages, etc. This breaks down in webinars. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. And to add on to that as well, Barney, what you've just said, from a sales perspective, what we seem to find a lot in conversations with prospective clients and potential leads is that it's about changing the stereotypical view from what's been set by existing players in the market. They've set a bar that probably isn't high enough, that isn't really elevating your online events and your webinars as high as they could be in getting the potential, particularly when it comes to branding, out of your webinars. So it's almost like picturing it as a physical event. People get creative with their physical events, so why not get creative with their online events? And so really it's our job within sales particularly to kind of get that message over to people that there are ways in which you can do that now without having to go with the likes of some of those brands that we've got up on the screen right now, and there are alternatives for you to be able to get creative.
And let's talk about that specifically into HubSpot, Tyler. inbound marketing is now well established. Content marketing is well established. As digital marketers and as an agency, working on behalf of customers, representing the brand and the story is key to that inbound and content marketing exercise, isn't it? But webinars is the area that lets us down.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think we'll touch on this a little bit later too. But if you think of a webinar similar to a live event, we're trying to get people into an experience, and if there are a lot of kind of deterrents in that experience, it's going to detract from the overall feeling and the overall I keep using the word experience. The overall experience that a customer or a prospect or someone that's interested in your brand is going to come in contact with. And so that branding piece is really big. If you were to throw a really big event, and you're wanting people to come into your office space, or you've rented an office space for a bigger event or something, you're going to take all the care possible to brand that, and have your logo in different places, and have your colors in different places, and have your taglines, and have your service offerings, and there's all the different things that you're going to talk about on a regular basis. So in a webinar, if I'm a user of that webinar and I've signed up for it, and I'm a potential customer and I'm interested in finding more about your brand, and you send me an invite to this webinar and I attend, and I'm taken away from your website into a very generic experience, it's very boring. It's very basic. It's not customizable, and so my expectations are probably let down. And there's so much of branding that's about feeling, and there's so much of branding about what that interaction that you're having with your prospective customer, and then from the customer side, what their experience and what their interaction is with the brand. And so there's a lot of if you're a HubSpot customer and a HubSpot user, from a business perspective, you're used to the idea of being able to customize everything, have your logo on everything, have your colors on everything, have your email templates created so that you can reuse those templates and it's very well branded. Your landing page is the same thing. Your thank you page is the same thing. We can go on and on and on. And so to not be able to take advantage of that and to use some of these, and I hate to kind of throw different brands under the bus, but we've got some of those listed there, but many of those are very generic experience. And I would say, if we go to one of the ones, logos on the screen is Zoom, and Zoom has been a great platform. We've set up many customers with Zoom, and I would say it's almost like an anti-brand. There really isn't a branding experience. There's not really a lot of opportunity for that. There's not an opportunity for it's all software based. It's not landing page based. And so you're really only interacting with the individual or their slides, and that's an option as well. But I know we're going to jump into a little bit more of kind of the opportunity that WorkCast can provide too. So the branding aspect's really big. I don't want to brush over the last bullet there, which I don't think I mentioned the last one, so my apologies there, but is where's the data? And so that's a huge aspect too of the data just falls through the cracks often when you're using multiple different tools kind of maybe hodgepodged together. Whereas if you're a HubSpot customer now, you understand the power of having a contact record and having and understanding all the different places they visited, all the different assets they've interacted with, when and where, how many times, how long, all that good stuff. So that's another element too, even from a sales perspective. And I know we'll touch on that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So.
And we're getting some great questions in about other platforms. We called out 4 here: Zoom, GoToWebinar, Cisco, and Optional, because they are the biggest in the market. And that's why we called them out. There are other platforms that people are mentioning here, like Jam Studio, Demio, and I guess they'll have different features and functionalities which may be stronger or weaker in any one of the spaces that we're going to talk about. I don't personally know all of those platforms, but it's good to know that there are people who are trying to address the challenges we're talking about. One of the things that about webinars that I think we've discussed, in lead up to this webinar itself, is how many touch points you actually have on a webinar. You've got, you just talked about the registration form, the thank you page, the holding page, the interstitial page, the live page itself. If you were a HubSpot customer putting up a white paper or an eBook, you'd make sure all of those pages were beautifully created. You wouldn't just kind of, leave it blank. So, there's a real opportunity here as well, I think. It's, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I want to talk a little bit about email specifically. email's the bane of the webinar person's life, I think. Talk a little bit about the problem of email, Tyler, and kind of the challenges if you're a HubSpot customer of webinar platforms and the email workflow that goes with it. But starting from that invite, because you'll always do your invite from HubSpot.
Yeah, correct. I'll even kind of, I guess, piggyback on something you said earlier, just now, of where, if you're creating, an ebook or something, or a PDF download, and you're wanting to brand your landing page experience, and that's great. But then take it a step further. This webinar that we're talking about, it would be a similar type of a lead generator as the PDF that you're creating, or that ebook you're creating. And you're never going to create an ebook that's a generic black and white, no logo, no branding, no idea who I downloaded this from. So I'd say it's the same thing for webinars. Then you don't want to, kind of give up that opportunity of when you're interacting with your potential customer. You don't want to give up that opportunity. So I would say it's similar. If we jump into email, one of the challenges with some of these other webinar platforms that we've had an experience with is it's hard to kind of cross over. So oftentimes you're getting, you're using, you've got HubSpot all set up. That's where your CRM is. That's where your landing pages are. That's where maybe your website is. That's where all your automation is. But then you've also, now I'm using, I think someone said Webinar Jam or Jam Studio or something. Maybe I'm using Webinar Jam, and I'm setting up my event in that, and I'm putting all my details on that, and then it's using their email software to send out reminders and confirmation and everything. And so now, and oftentimes in the different other webinar platforms, it's very limited. So not a whole lot of control, not a whole lot of control even over frequency or delays, or how often registrants are receiving those emails. Generally, some that are a little more advanced might allow you to upload your logo, and that's going to get implemented into an email, and some allow you to customize messaging. I would say most don't. Most are kind of a lot more boilerplate, and the only thing they'll implement or insert is maybe a text format of your company name, the title, and the date. And so it's very limited. So you really are losing that opportunity of when someone signs up for a webinar, likely, you're promoting that weeks in advance, and maybe you're sending out, a weekly reminder. You're sending out a couple prior to the event, maybe a 24-hour before. So, you could probably count maybe 3, 4, 5 emails that someone might receive beforehand. And so those are going to be 5 emails that you're missing out on the opportunity to even just give that another touch point of your brand and the benefits your brand have. And whether that's just a logo, whether that's just a tagline, it is another touch point you're going to have with that potential customer. So really you're just, I guess I'm looking at the slide now. It's, really you're at the mercy of the webinar provider and whatever their options are as far as customization. And most of the time that's pretty weak comparative to what you're used to within the HubSpot platform and the customizations that you're used to. So.
Yeah.
Anything else to add there, Barney or Rachel, with email?
Yeah, well, I always like the calendar stuff as well. People, not to be underestimated. That, you send an invite to somebody or to register. They register, and you send a confirmation email. You want that to go into their calendar. If that doesn't go into their calendar in a meaningful way, with the right links and the right branding and the right message and the right title and to remind people what they've actually signed up for, your chances of them attending that event are pretty poor. And, and I think there's a real opportunity there, to make sure that's done correctly. And again, to your point, it's, these platforms are built as meeting tools, to run meetings. They were not built to run live events as webinars, one-to-many. And so they kind of have to do stuff at a scale way that restricts people's customization ability. Rachel, did you have you were going to chime in there with something?
Very much similar to what you were saying, Tyler, and you too, Barney, in terms of we get asked on a daily basis from prospective clients if we're able to do this, because they, as marketers, they want full control over what their potential leads are being exposed to and what their attendees and registrants are exposed to. So it's about making their lives easier as well in the fact that they don't have to set everything up on separate systems or, as you say, Tyler, be at a mercy of these webinar platforms and just be happy with what they're given. So it's about educating them on what they can actually do now with a webinar platform with this HubSpot integration.
So we've got a couple of questions now. Go ahead. Sorry, Tyler.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think you just mentioned different tools. I think, even if a webinar platform has the ability to provide basic customization, I know from an agency perspective, every time we were meeting with a new client and they're, going through their list of tool set, there are some that we know how to use and there are some that we've never heard of and there are some that we've, interacted with a little bit. But every time you learn a new tool, it's, there's a lot of hours that are put into learning that tool and becoming proficient with that. And so now you're going to, create, potentially more hurdles for yourself learning a new tool. As well as, okay, I've got my initial email set that I'm reminding people, and then webinar happens. Okay, now the post interaction is now going to be controlled through HubSpot, I suppose, but that's now a different, it's a broken system. It's not all kind of under one roof. So
absolutely.
Some good questions about the live event experience coming in as well, to do with how we show content. So whether we show slides, audio, cameras, etc. And we'll come to that in a second. Let's talk about just even getting your registrants into the live event and then the experience they have on the page when they're in that live event. Let's talk about, we talked about this before, Tyler, and you raised this actually specifically when we were preparing for this issue of plugins and downloads and how much of a barrier that really is.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Great story from maybe 30 minutes ago for me. So I come into the office this morning, early morning for me. I come to my computer. I'm going to restart it because I try to restart it, unfortunately every couple of weeks, but I restart my computer and then I run in a Mac, and so it just decides to install an update. Well, that's great, but there's still a deal on my screen that says it's another 58 minutes. And so I'm kind of scrambling a little bit going, okay, now what do I do? Well, I open up my iPad and I'm able to just load the landing page that we're presenting on, and there's no additional software downloads. There really wasn't a hiccup for this ability, to do this. Whereas I'll contrast that with other, webinars that either I've run, been a part of, or just attended, and I'm having to download a certain plugin. I'm having to download a certain app if you're trying to use it on a mobile, a tablet or a phone. I'm having to download a certain plugin to have that interact with a browser. There's all sorts of different things, all things that are losing your attendees. I would say the average person is or might be proficient enough to kind of make sure they're going through and installing different, pieces here and there to be able to attend something. But there's a lot of hurdles for that. If you think of like a corporate experience, are you allowed to install your own software? If you're not allowed, the user's not allowed to install their own software, well, instantly they're not going to show up at your webinar. So that's one of the biggest pieces there for the live event. I'd say also we touched many times on the unbranded experience. And so if I'm being redirected to a different company, there's probably a WebEx logo in the corner, or there's the Zoom platform that you're running, or there's Webinar Jams logo in the corner. Well, it should be your logo in the corner that people are seeing, and your colors that people are seeing and interacting with. So the unbranded experience is definitely something that is lacking in some of those other platforms. And then oftentimes the interactions. So, obviously people are submitting questions throughout. So people are, it's easy to submit questions within, the WorkCast platform here, and whereas in other ones it's sometimes a little bit hard. So it's a one-way presentation, which is a deterrent from really having people engage with the webinar and understanding that. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that.
Well, it's interesting that all of us as webinar vendors, and we're trying to take a balanced view here that we want webinars to be successful for everybody, whichever platform you use. And we want people to be able to engage their audiences. And part of engagement is allowing people to do things whilst they're watching a webinar. If you force somebody else off to a plugin to watch your webinar, they are not in the page that you want them to be in. So they're not on your website. They're not on a page where you might have other calls to action or downloads or white papers or things to click on that keeps them where they are. That to me feels like a lost opportunity. You're just forcing somebody somewhere else and then not using the power of, say, HubSpot to bring other things to bear. on this page today, we haven't gone super engaged, loads of stuff going on, but we could put, because it's a HubSpot page that you're watching through, we could have anything there. We could have, click to, get a white paper, click to see another video, click to download something else, click to, anything, any call to action that you typically use in HubSpot, you could stick on this page. And so, there's a real opportunity there that because of the way that webinar technology has been built in the past, it's been restricting the opportunity for digital marketers to do what they do in every other landing page that they create, which is, have various points of call to action and ways for people to engage with that page. And we at WorkCast are just thinking that webinars, live webinars and on-demand webinars should be seen as just a form of content in the content marketing mix. But because of technology, they've always kind of sat outside that way of running them. That's my view anyway.
No, I agree.
Sure.
And I think as well, Tyler, off of the back of your second point regarding security as well, I think it's becoming more and more apparent that marketers do need to think about that in terms of the types of attendees and markets that they're trying to target with their webinars. They do need to obviously make it more successful and make it extremely convenient for them, but security is key. And hacking and things like that via software is definitely on the increase, particularly over the past few years. And that's why we're seeing a lot more moving over to a platform like this as well. And it just makes it so much easier. And really, marketers and teams do have that duty to kind of look at those alternatives and make sure that content is accessible to people and not limit who can actually watch it. And it's similar, in regards to GDPR as well. Is your webinar platform that is currently a software, is that GDPR compliant? So it's all those sorts of things that people need to consider as well.
Nice segue into data there, Rachel. Like it.
It's like I knew what was coming.
There you go. Data. We run webinars because we run webinars for two reasons. We run webinars because we want to inform people and provide valuable content. But as marketers, we want the data. We want the data of who's engaged, why they're engaged, who they are, why they've attended, why they're, if they're a lead, are they in the sales funnel? Data is really important. Let's talk about, you touched on it earlier, Tyler, about data. Just talk specifically about, what you want to do with webinar data, I suppose, and the barriers that exist.
Yeah, no, great question. I think even this is this slide, and we can cover it a little bit here, but I've seen several different questions that have come in about other different platforms and webinar platforms, and what about this one, and what about this one? And I think that honestly, there's one of the biggest differences between, I know we're highlighting WorkCast here. One of the differences between WorkCast and others is the integration within HubSpot and the movement of data. And so, for instance, I think someone mentioned Demio and Webinar Jam and stuff a little bit earlier. And so, some of the challenges with those is how, so great. I've got a really successful webinar and I've got hundreds of attendees. This is awesome. I'm really excited about this. Each of them have asked questions. The webinar went great. Okay, now what? I'm either using like a Zapier type of a connection, Automate.io, Azuka, or whatever. There's so many different integrators. But what happens if that's slow, or that integration doesn't work every time, or it's not real time, or it's only moving one portion of the data over? It's only moving the email address into a list in HubSpot. Yeah. There's just so many different data points that you can glean from running a webinar. And so when the integration is working at its kind of full potential, there's a lot of really great things you can do with that data. From understanding, like I'm looking at the different questions coming in and knowing that the people asking the questions are more interested in the webinar platform than the people that are sitting in the background. And so those people, and I'm just using this as an example, those people are probably more interested in your product or what your service is or what you're highlighting within the specific webinar than, like I say, some of the people sitting in the background. And so I want, as a marketer, I want to know who those people are, because those have now moved from a sales side, which we'll get into in a little bit, but those have been now moved from, MQLs to SQLs. Those are people that I want to pass to my sales team and say, hey, can you please follow up with this list of 12 people, 20 people, whatever it might be, because they were very engaged with the webinar. Here's the specific questions they had. And then also from a data perspective, we use a lot of these types of questions to create like FAQ sections or knowledge base articles for our clients and for companies, just because oftentimes, okay, I've seen this question come through multiple times. I must not be addressing it well. Our website must not be addressing it well. Maybe they're a current customer and we're not able to answer that. So anyway, so there's lots of different ways to use that data, and to get it from a platform that's not integrated into, we're talking about HubSpot here, to get it from this other platform into HubSpot is sometimes a hassle. It's downloading CSV files and uploading those. Sometimes there's data that's missing in that. Sometimes you're only, like I said earlier, getting one aspect of that data. It's just an email address and first and last name, which is better than nothing for sure. But there's better ways to do it as kind of the summary of this, I'd say.
I think we're going to really drive into that from the world. I mean, there's two sides to this, isn't there? There's what you do with it as the marketer, Tyler,
sure.
and how you use that for follow-up and for automation and workflows and drip campaigns and lead nurture campaigns and support campaigns like you just mentioned. And then there's also the sales side of it, and we're going to talk about that and what the salesperson needs, the data they need out of this, and how quickly they need it. And we'll come on to that in a minute. Because I think we'll flip over to Rachel's view of the world. So kind of in summary of the pain, I know we focused a lot on pain, and I guess the reason we did that is because I think it's a point that Rachel made. People don't know that there can be a different way. I think that we've become so browbeaten into thinking that the only way to run webinars is the way that these major vendors have allowed us to do it, that we don't challenge it. Yet we have tools like HubSpot in our kit bag, which gives us so much more flexibility in every other piece of content marketing we do. We kind of just abandon that thought or ignore it for webinars, and that seemed wrong to me. And so we wanted just to focus and highlight some of the barriers that you're experiencing that you probably haven't really thought about, or if you have, you've just ignored because you didn't think there was a different way. Would you guys add anything to that?
I would agree. Absolutely agree.
I'm going to ask a poll.
Yeah, no, I'd agree as well, and I think, go ahead and run that poll, Barney.
Yeah, so I'm just going to ask the poll, which are the following the barriers to your webinars being more successful? And if you hadn't thought about it before that section, hopefully you've thought about it now. And we've got a tick box, so you can tick as many of these as you like. So we didn't really touch on productivity, so time to set the webinar up. How complex is it to actually set up that entire workflow, that entire email workflow, all the landing pages, however you're doing it? Is that a barrier? The branding, is that a barrier? Is the customization of forms or workflows a barrier? Is data a barrier? These plugins and downloads that we talked about, is that a barrier? The branding of the event experience as well, so the experience that you're making the viewers of an attendee webinar have, is that a barrier? Is getting that on demand out, so we haven't really touched on what you do with the recording. Some platforms allow you to host in the platform, and sometimes you're going to have to download. If you can remember to click record, you're then going to download an MP4 and do something with that somewhere else and gate it or not gate it or host it somewhere else, all of those problems. And some of you will sit there and go, there's nothing can make any of my webinars better, they're perfect. And that's great, because we'd like to talk to you and understand what you're doing, because that's the Holy Grail. So answer that. So it's multi-choice, you can tick more than one. So please go ahead and tick that, and I'll bring in the results shortly. And then we're going to move on to Rachel. So let's get the results into that. Wow. So we have a pretty split. So people are ticking boxes all over the place. We have people. Every single one of those barriers that we've identified is a barrier that's been highlighted by you as an audience. So if I publish the results there, you'll see that we've got ticks everywhere. And there's not many ticks in my webinars are perfect. So, that's what we thought. So let's move on and talk about it from the salesperson's perspective. And Rachel, let's just kind of, let's talk about kind of like what the Holy Grail would be. What if it was like this? So, Tyler, do you want to just talk about, I don't want to overly dwell on the WorkCast flow, but I mean, if there were an integration that looked like this, would this be beneficial to you as an agency?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I'm excited to get into this now that everyone is intimidated and not interested in ever running a webinar on a different platform at this point. But yeah, no, I think that, just jumping in here, what if it was this simple? What if you had a platform that could integrate directly into HubSpot, which you're used to using and proficient using, that it's as simple as creating the event, and then preparing for the event and getting people to the event and then following up with them afterwards. And so, WorkCast has that ability. I think it's funny to be outside of, the WorkCast team, but also kind of touting that, man, this is a really cool integration. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out what are additives we can add to the HubSpot ecosystem to be more successful for our clients, and this is definitely one of them. I think webinars are something that is often brushed over as a lead generation tactic, and this is definitely one that we're trying to integrate more into for clients, specifically because of the power of it. I'd say it's further down the line, or further down the funnel rather. As far as kind of, if someone attends a webinar, they're more interested. You have more of an interactive conversation with them, which is something that you really are wanting to achieve with really any of your sales prospects anyway. So, I'll keep running through this so that we, just in effort of time, obviously I want to get to the sales side too. So, as far as just the HubSpot functionality, everybody's familiar with workflows and the automation aspect of HubSpot. You're going to be able to create, workflows that are centered around a specific date, and then backfill from those based, emails, offers that you're presenting to the people, confirmation of registration, all that kind of stuff. And then after that workflow is done, imagine being able to have them, okay, that workflow is finished on that date. Now, after that date's completed, I want to send them now to a different workflow. And so everybody that attended that was in that workflow is now sent to a different workflow, which is now post follow-up, which is sending out that recording that you've already done, sending out future offers, other email campaigns that you're running, or other marketing campaigns that you're running are all now in this next workflow. So you're able to kind of continually build on to your marketing automation that like you're used to, using the landing page template function, which I know that with WorkCast has some great some templates in the marketplace now, and I know there's lots in the pipeline that are coming out soon. So there are some templates specifically for email, specifically for landing pages that have the integration of WorkCast, which is a really cool concept as well. So there's less effort that you're needing as a marketer to, now I have to design all these pages. Well, no, there are some in the HubSpot marketplace that are available as well. So. And then I know we touched on this as well, and my apologies for just kind of rocket fire through some of these, but like the data side, around everything living in a contact record, and having kind of being able to understand what people have interacted with when, and then also the other side would be just overall performance of landing pages. And so like we run like a software called Hotjar, or some use Lucky Orange, or some of those kind of heat mapping tools or live recording tools of what's actually happening on a web page. Well, now you can do that now on these landing pages that you have. So if you've got a form at the top of your landing page and a form at the bottom, I want to know which one's performing better, or you've got different content pieces. And so you can do that. You can do that on the live page, and really have an understanding of what people are doing and interacting with during the live event, which is really cool. And then not to mention all of this, the follow-up, the lead scoring, the task, and the automation, and all those types of kind of tactics and activities, post event as well. So really, you've got complete control of the whole process, from start to finish, from creating the event and even thinking about it and coming up with a title, all the way through following up and passing leads to your sales team. So I think does that jump into, did I fly through everything, or does that jump into the sales?
The key point is the data never leaves HubSpot, right? So, the whole point is that you're running a webinar in the same way as you run any other kind of campaign. And, and that's never been true, because you've had to pass data out to a different platform, do a whole load of stuff in your webinar platform, and then try and get the data back in again. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. It's all sitting in HubSpot, never leaves HubSpot. So, it's just, that brings real productivity advantages. So, that allows people to run more webinars because they're easier to produce, they're easier to track, they're easier to measure. Imagine that as well, being able to beta test your registration page. do an A/B test on your registration page. You've got two different registration pages. Which ones get more registrations? I mean, nobody does that in webinars now because you can't. Well, you can now. So there are loads of different advantages for this stuff being inside of webinars, and that's why webinars are going to be, become better. And when we, there's a great question that's come and says, you've got the slide titled "Why Webinars Can Be Better." Well, they're better because of the 5 key areas that we're dealing with. Productivity being one of them. And this is such a key part for the marketer, you, Tyler, that this functionality allows you to run more and run them better, have more insight into what's going on. So that, this is about the email. Imagine understanding your email metrics better for webinars.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, it's something that's familiar too, because you're used to evaluating your campaigns within the HubSpot platform. And so these are all going to be kind of fit within there. You're going to see, in dashboards and such, able to control the frequency. Obviously, we touched on branding earlier and the pain points of some of the platforms, but now flip that to the other side, being able to actually control your branding and have it appear as you want it to. And then that seamless kind of, post-webinar follow-up as well. So,
no, exactly. So part of this is about productivity. Part of this is about giving the marketer, the digital marketer who is responsible for organizing and running these webinars. They're not the presenter. They're not necessarily the content producer even to the webinar, but they are the person who's responsible for the success of the webinar and measuring the success of the webinar. These tools empower that person to do their job better. And that's our view of the world anyway.
I agree.
Rachel, you're going to come in with something there?
I was just about to say, specifically in regards to that past slide that we were looking at just there, and I think there's always a constant push-pull relationship with marketers and salespeople, because the marketers are giving us leads and we are constantly asking for more information so that we can, come across as if we know who we are talking to. And the reason why we can do that now particularly is because of this HubSpot integration, and we can get more and more information on these contacts that we are reaching out to, and utilizing this inbound marketing method. And it helps with something like HubSpot to really drill down and get these quality leads from webinars, because you can access the information straight away all within one system. So, even prior to a webinar going live, you can click into the email percentages, for example. You can see the click rates, and you can see who clicks on these emails, and you can get an idea of the types of people that are interacting with your communications that you're sending out. You can find out who is interested. Are they appealing more to marketers? Is it appealing more to those who are internal comms, or are they internally training for CPDs, for example, who are really paying attention to the tools and the online tools to do this sort of online event, these online events.
And to play to that point, we're talking here on this one about landing pages. This control that you get over all the landing pages in that event, the control that you get and visibility you get into what people do when they're on your landing page. You talked about Hotjar and seeing performance of landing pages. You actually get to see what people click on your registration. If they came to your registration page and bounced off but clicked something else, you're going to know that. So actually you get some visibility on everything. So as a marketer, you can really hone in on the style of how to invite, how to register, how to confirm, how to get people into the live event that works for you and for your audience. And I think that's really valuable stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. And just to touch on really fast, I know if you're not a WorkCast user, the automation of new events and specific to landing pages is pretty amazing. So I'm going to go into, you go into the WorkCast platform, I set up my event, and then I hit go, essentially, and then I go back to HubSpot, and my landing pages for that event are already created. And so it takes out several different steps that you would normally have to do. And so once you've got your templates created in HubSpot and all that stuff, the creation of landing pages and automation is amazing. So, and then just to jump real quick through live event, and I think I'm going to stop talking so that Rachel can talk. Her stuff's more exciting anyway. So live events, we touched on, not needing plugins, not needing downloads, all that stuff is a big deal. It really is, as far as kind of getting people to an event. Maybe they've signed up. Once they've signed up, you've gotten commitment from, I want them to show up at my event, which is a big deal. And so, and then obviously like the complete branding side of things, back to, metrics and analytics. You can, see at your live event, what are people interested in? Are they cruising around your page, and are they interacting with other pieces of content that might be on your page? Are they spending more time looking at the bios of the presenters than they are at the actual event? That's not true probably in this case. But different CTAs, how are people clicking on those, people viewing those? So many different jumping off points at post event as well. So live events, completely branded, big deal.
Yeah. And, we're not going to dwell on data. We've talked about data. In fact, let's talk about data when we move into sales. But the key point is the data never leaves HubSpot. And if you're a HubSpot user, you know that what that means. That means that every single list and workflow that you're creating related to HubSpot as a content source is managed within HubSpot with data that stays in HubSpot. You're not having to go in and out and go and get data from somewhere else. And that's really, really powerful. And as we're speaking, and the data slide comes up, a great question comes in around GDPR. How much is allowed with GDPR? Do users have to provide their approval at some stage regarding the tracking of their email behavior related to the webinars? Well, all three of us will have a view on that. Because you're using HubSpot functionality, your ability to comply with GDPR as a data handler, i.e. you hosting the webinar, suddenly got a whole lot easier, is my view. And we as a webinar platform, well, we're GDPR compliant because we're handling the data in our platform correctly. So, Tyler, have you done much work with GDPR here in the States yet with organizations about how to put up those kind of statements of compliance in the registration form, for example, or in the emails?
Yeah, we've done a lot as of recent in the last number of weeks. But I think from a form perspective for webinars, you're better safe than sorry. And so most of the time, what we're seeing and what we're helping clients with is when do you add kind of that, maybe that's that checkbox or that notice and consent kind of concept. And most of the time you're adding that into, to the bottom of by submitting this form, you're allowing us to, send you emails based on your interest in this webinar or your interest in this marketing activity, whatnot. You're obviously always on every email. You're given the ability to opt out at any point. You may be kind of doing a head nod to some of your, the privacy aspect of, or privacy policies you've got in place, that you're not going to, sell their data and they're not going to use it in any other format or fashion. And so, yeah, it's worth at this point in this day and age to have some sort of a disclaimer on your registration forms. Make it as simple as you can with your checking your own internal checkboxes there, but it's worth having something like that to kind of to protect your outreach moving forward. And
the point is, because you're creating those in HubSpot, it's possible to put those checkboxes and those links and everything in a much easier way than it probably is in your webinar platform. So,
it's already all built in.
Yeah, exactly. So. I spun up another poll, so that the question was, would you run more webinars if they were truly integrated into HubSpot? I'm just going to get the results from that. The answer is a resounding yes. 88% of people who answered that poll said yes, they'd run more webinars if they were truly integrated into HubSpot. Pretty resounding tick in the box. Webinars that don't sit integrated to your marketing automation platform, there is a barrier to you running more, that's for sure. Sales. Let's get to you, Rachel. You're the person who's got to turn these leads into revenue. So take us through your role in the world of webinars for you.
Yeah. So with webinars, generally speaking, we see them as the most high quality leads that you can get. Reason being is because they've shown specific interest in the content that is being pushed out. And so we know that those who we contact or reach out to, they've shown that interest. They are the ones that have ultimately put their name into the hat to discuss and show more interest and find out more about what it is that they're watching. We know they're interested, and as I say, from a sales perspective, we class them as the hot leads. And that allows us to, create a conversation and allows for a more of a consultative approach from a sales perspective. It's not always about a hard sell and that's what you're looking out to do. People who watch this content also want to have more information. And from a sales perspective, it's about creating more value in the conversation that you have with those leads and those prospects as well. So in terms of the inbound, from the webinars and from a HubSpot integration perspective, it's brilliant from a sales point of view because you can see exactly when they signed up. Did they ask any questions before they signed up? You can research all of that before even getting in touch, so you have an idea of what angle they're coming from and what it is and why they have an interest in this webinar. So you've got more of an idea exactly what it is that they're looking for. And with the HubSpot integration, what's really helpful about the setup between the webinar integration is that thanks to the marketers, they can set up the MQLs. They can be pushed through as MQLs to us, and we can individually, as salespeople, receive notifications of new contacts that have came through into HubSpot. And then it's down to us really to drill down whether they are going to progress to a sales qualified lead after we have that conversation and after we've done research on their company, for example. So it really helps from a sales perspective having this integration because you can see exactly from start to finish, from end to end, the process that they've taken to actually watch the webinar. Have they clicked on any other content when they've signed, after or before they've signed up for this webinar? Have they clicked on any of your other resources that are available on your website at all? And by doing that, you'll build an entire image and an entire not a profile, but a sort of a persona, shall we say, of a contract, and you'll get to know exactly what it is that they're looking for before even speaking to them, so you know exactly the kind of approach that you want to take. So that really helps with the HubSpot integration because you can build that picture of the kind of people that you're going to be speaking to, and it really helps sort of bridge that gap between the marketers and the salespeople as well, because you're on the same level and you can see exactly the same information. And feedback can be really quick as well. So, if you want something changing on a landing page, it won't take long for the marketers to do that and for you to actually see the results from a sales perspective. So if there's key information that you can gather upon a landing page that a salesperson might, want to get hold of, then they can implement that on the next webinar and it won't take too much. You won't have to, as Tyler touched on earlier, you don't have to jump between different systems to do that because it's all within this HubSpot integration, which makes it so much easier.
Just on the point of productivity here and, that bridging that gap between marketing and sales, I know that we, because the data's in HubSpot, we know exactly who they are, where they are, which account they belong to if they're a customer, and which territory they're in if they're a prospect. And that allows that routing of tasks and notifications to different sales teams in different territories just so much more, so much easier. We can just, you'll only get notified of a task of a webinar contact that's in your territory or in your or as one of your customers, Rachel. And that's really powerful. It's from a productivity point of view. There's just no messing about the data.
Absolutely.
There's a question here that came in around quality of content of a webinar. We talk about engagement and scoring. Do you want to just talk about lead scoring that we do?
Mm-hmm. So depending on the activities or the actions that particular contacts make, depending on the amount of emails that they open and whether they sign up for webinars and the types of content that they download, for example, eBooks. This all goes towards what we call lead scoring, and what that helps to do is actually show you the quality of the contact. Are they going to be worth pursuing for your sales team, or do they need a little bit more nurturing? Do they need a little bit more sort of nurturing from marketing? Are they in the correct workflow? And that's what is great about the HubSpot integration, because you can switch them between the two if you like. And as your sales teams grows as well, what it allows you to do is the more prospects and the more leads that come in, it allows you to prioritise. So the higher the lead score, the higher up on your priority list they are to contact. So that is one way in which you can. It helps your data become more manageable as well. So you're not just dumped with a CSV file with a load of names, emails and numbers to contact, you have a really good idea of where to start and who to start with first.
And to your point earlier, Tyler, you talked about, the most engaged people in webinars are the people who are actively asking questions or answering polls or clicking on something on the screen. That can be built into your lead scoring too. So to answer this question specifically, which was how do you measure the quality of content of the webinar itself? Well, you can do an engagement score or a lead score that's based on the activity that user took whilst they were in the webinar, and add that to your lead scoring too. So, I think that's what you were alluding to earlier, wasn't it? In terms of the fact that you get all that data as well.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and can build lists off of that, or like Rachel was saying, as far as adding that to your lead score, super valuable.
And so, and the question is, what does HubSpot offer to do it? And the answer is HubSpot's, because the data's in HubSpot, you can attribute a score, a lead score, to any activity that's taken place in the HubSpot experience. And because the whole webinar's taken place in the HubSpot experience, you can add a score to any component part of the webinar as well. Cool. Just in terms of your, I think the evolution in WorkCast is a big one for sales, Rachel, where I think when we used to run webinars and didn't have HubSpot, and certainly didn't have the HubSpot integration, there was a big time lag, wasn't there, between the registering and the attendance of the webinar running, the live webinar running, and then getting that right data into the salespeople's hands so that they can do a meaningful follow-up in a timely way. That's improved enormously, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and that's what's key, particularly now. And people want what they want right now. They want it immediately, and that's the real sort of the benefit of these tasks and this lead scoring, because your sales team can be notified straight away. As soon as they are sent a task, as soon as they receive a notification about this, they can contact them straight away. So while it's fresh in the mind of that contact, of that potential prospect, get on them straight away and find out a little bit more before the call just about the company. Are they currently doing webinars? Are they not doing webinars? What other interactions have they made previously with the platform or with your website and marketing that you weren't already aware of? So as you say, Barney, it's kind of this whole HubSpot integration makes the entire attendee experience a lot more smooth and a lot more enjoyable too.
Great. So just talking a little bit before we wrap up now, a couple of minutes left. I think we've highlighted that this integration really is targeted at two audiences: end users who are running webinars, and also agencies. Lone Fir, you're an agency there, Tyler. You probably sit with two views of the world. Running webinars for clients, but also enabling clients to run their own webinars via HubSpot. And that's powerful for agencies, isn't it, to be able to do that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, our view from an agency perspective, obviously we love working with clients and, long-term over multiple years, but at the same time, we need, those clients to be able to stand on their own two legs if they decide to bring in, internal resources or something. And so to be able to kind of set people up with, hey, this is all the integrations are built, the templates are built, the emails are built. Okay, now, more, integration type of a project like that. And then they're on their way and running them for themselves and they're all set up for a win. So, yeah, we definitely do see it from two sides, but having integrations that are built into the HubSpot ecosystem are very powerful. So,
and I know that you're helping us build some templates. So that's exactly where agencies can start to help their customers, which is building those template experiences, which really represent the client's brand and not somebody else's. You touched on this right at the beginning. I just because we focused on sales, but I think you touched on the point. The world of account-based marketing is really important, and webinars, I think, have always been seen as a kind of lead generation or top of the funnel or sort of middle of the funnel type of content. But actually, I think you talked about support content earlier and customer education as being equally valuable area for webinars nowadays. And with the release of Service Hub by HubSpot, I think there's a whole new world where webinars can be valuable. And I know we've got a great case study of it, but what's your view, Tyler?
Yeah, no, I think your guys' case study, it's great as well. But, Service Hub's a whole new kind of arm to HubSpot. So if you're not familiar with it, check it out. We actually just did a couple of different blogs on it, just kind of introduce it to people. We're starting to introduce it to our clients and build the integrations for it. But just as far as, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but as far as support, highlighting, different common questions that are coming up and then embedding those videos in your support documents, in your knowledge bases, in your FAQ sections. And it's something that kind of, in some ways kind of kills two birds with one stone. You're able to really interact with your clients and your customers, but you're also then creating that content for additional uses later on. So there's a lot of different views for webinars. We do have some clients that will record webinars like this. They use, some of them use Zoom, some of them use WorkCast, whatnot, but they'll record webinars. There's no attendees on the other side, but they'll record these webinars and then embed that video to use, later on. So it's less of a webinar and more of a recording device that they can, continue to have people use later on. So that's a great use for kind of, customer education support, integrating those into your knowledge bases and FAQs moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. And people forget that they put a lot of effort into this content as well. So it's about creating longevity to it. So that is definitely a good point, Tyler.
So a couple of just wrap-up questions in conclusion. So that, we talked about those 5 key barrier areas that are preventing people running really cool webinars. And those are really the 5 key areas that we feel that can be solved for clients to make their webinars better. And I've just put up a final poll here, which of those 5 areas have most value to you. A couple of questions before we wrap up. Question here about HubSpot. So does HubSpot consider themselves to be competitors to Salesforce? Tyler, you can handle that one. I guess there's a short and a long answer.
There is a short and long answer. They are a competitor to Salesforce. I would say it is a different style of platform, mostly based around inbound marketing. Salesforce has a lot more of the customizable sales interactions and reporting and those types of things. But we have started to move more and more people away from Salesforce into HubSpot for the ease of use and integrations. It's a lot more of a out of the box, off the shelf type of a solution that really works, as well as being able to add some customizations to it. So I do believe they are a competitor to Salesforce, in short.
I think they are. Yeah. Am I right in saying that WorkCast will be needed for HubSpot to have webinars integrated into it? No, that's not completely true. I'll answer that one. You can run any webinar platform with HubSpot, but you'll experience some of the barriers that we highlighted at the top of the show. If you want to get rid of those barriers, then using WorkCast will help with those. So, if you want to check out WorkCast, feel free. That's not the point of this. The point of this webinar was to highlight some of the areas where you might be able to do webinars better and some of the things you may need to consider when you're putting these webinars together. And if that means looking for a different platform like WorkCast, then so be it. On
the flip side of that too, Barney, the flip side of that, WorkCast is also standalone. So if you aren't a HubSpot customer and you're interested in a webinar platform, WorkCast can and has the ability to send some of those emails and that kind of thing as well. So it is standalone. So they don't need to be used together. They can be used independently. But like Barney said, trying to highlight how they can be most effectively used together. So.
Thank you for the plug, Tyler. Guys,
of course.
I want to thank you both for spending your time with me today. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on today, and we look forward to continuing working with Lone Fir as we move forward. Thanks very much. And Rachel, thanks for giving us the insight from the day of and life of a salesperson at WorkCast. And I'm glad the webinars are adding value to your daily activities.
Thank you.
That's great to hear. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, look out for our next webinar coming soon. And in the spirit of this, we'll be following up with you shortly after this webinar. So thanks everybody for attending, and we'll speak to you all soon.